What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, and I am super excited about the episode that we have on tap for today, man. I've been in class all day thinking about one thing: Week 1 college football. Florida State versus FSU is not just the biggest game on the Week 1 regular season slate, but it's one of the biggest games that will be played this whole entire college football season. And we're going to get into that matchup. We're also going to touch on UNC versus South Carolina. Deion Sanders making his head coaching debut for the Colorado Buffaloes on the road against TCU. We're going to talk about that. Going to give you guys my preview and predictions for those matchups. We're also going to touch on some NFL topics as well. Before we begin, you guys already know the drill. The JT Sports Podcast is more than just a YouTube channel. You can find us on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave us with a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do so is by giving us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All you got to do is go to whichever podcasting platform you prefer, type in the JT Sports Podcast, and it will pop up. Or you can go down to the description down below, scroll down a little bit, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. The biggest game of the Week 1 college football slate is LSU versus FSU. And a lot of people are sick and tired of Florida State fans. Florida State fans pretty much have made it seem like it's either playoffs or bust for them. And you can kind of see why. I mean, this is the most talented team that Florida State has had in a very long time. And meanwhile, you got LSU, who's coming off a really spectacular season last year, year 1 under Brian Kelly. And both of these programs are looking to jump into the playoff conversation. Both of these two teams are looking to cement themselves as legit national championship contenders for the foreseeable future. You ask me who has more pressure to win this game, LSU or FSU? Gotta go FSU, man. FSU has super high expectations. People are picking FSU to dethrone Clemson and win the ACC. If Florida State loses this game, how do we view them after? Because they have a lot of hype. They're on top of the world right now. They're in the top 10. They were 8th in the AP poll, people. This Florida State team has a lot of talent. But if they lose this matchup to LSU, and then let's say they lose to Clemson, that's pretty much their season. These are the two biggest games that Florida State is going to play in this year. And LSU, you lose this game, then your road to the playoffs gets even more complicated because you're playing in the stacked SEC. So your margin for error is already incredibly thin. With a loss here, it becomes even thinner. Both of these two teams have playoff expectations. And even though this is a Week 1 game, it seems like there are really high playoff implications at stake in this matchup. Jaden Daniels, Jordan Travis are the two quarterbacks starting in this matchup. Both are considered to be two of the best quarterbacks in college football. Both look to be Heisman hopefuls for this season. Jordan Travis, this man's development has been very impressive. I remember there was a time when Jordan Travis, every time he used to come into the game, you knew what the hell he was finna do. Run the football. His development as a passer has really impressed me over the last couple of years. And he's going against a really good front seven in LSU. Now, LSU is going to be without one of their best players in Mason Smith, who got suspended stupidly by the NCAA for a bullshit reason, and he's not going to be able to play in this game. But LSU still has a ton of monsters on that front seven. They got a ton of depth and talent on that defensive line, and their linebacker unit is really good. You know about Harold Perkins, the freshman phenom last season. He's going into a second season, but they acquired a really underrated linebacker from the transfer portal. His name is Omar Speights, and last year he played for Oregon State. You gotta neutralize the rushing ability of Jordan Travis. When he gets out to the open field, it's raps. He's really elusive, really fast, agile. He has cat-like reflexes when he decides to tuck and run. LSU has to be able to contain him. And they got to be able to slow down these wide receivers, bro. Like, LSU secondary is a really big question going into this game. And it's not really because they don't have talent. There is talent there. You just wonder how that talent is going to fare in the first game of the regular season against one of the best receiving corps in all of college football. They got Johnny Wilson, who's 6'7", 235, 240 fucking pounds. Who's going to guard that in the LSU secondary? Who do they have at cornerback that's going to be able to line up and contain Johnny Wilson? This is like a created player on NCAA or Madden. 6'7", 235 pounds or 240? That's insane. All Jordan Travis has to do is throw it up to this fool, and he's going up and coming down with it. There's a reason why this FSU team is receiving a lot of attention. This team isn't overrated if we're just evaluating them based on sheer talent. We know LSU has a really great team. Okay, but FSU's team is just as good as LSU. They have pretty much built their team through college football free agency, which we consider to call the transfer portal, when really it's free agency if we're just keeping it 100. And the LSU, they've gotten some good players from the transfer portal, but FSU went ham in the portal this offseason. They got Fentro Cypress, the second best cornerback in the transfer portal behind Travis Hunter. Offensively, you got Keon Coleman from Michigan State. They also got Jaheim Bell from South Carolina. Jaheim Bell is a freaking monster, bruh. He's like a chess piece. You can line this fool up anywhere on FSU's offense. Last year, I watched a lot of him at South Carolina. They had this man playing quarterback in a wildcat, fullback, tight end, wide receiver. Hell, what other positions is he going to play next? There are a lot of playmakers on this LSU offense that FSU's defense is going to have to be able to slow down. We know the talent that FSU has on offense is really good, but the talent that they have on defense is just as good as what they have on offense. LSU's offense was kind of Jaden Daniels dependent at times. When Jaden Daniels was balling out, LSU was really good. When he was doing damage not just through the air, but with his legs, LSU's offense was hard to stop. You remember that game that he had against Alabama and Florida. When Jaden Daniels was on, LSU was on. You wonder if that's going to be the same scenario this year. Are they going to be still Jaden Daniels dependent? Or are they going to have other guys who step up at running back? Your wide receiving core is really good. Your wide receiver, you for a reason. You got Malik Neighbors. You also got a lot of talent behind him. This LSU secondary has a lot of talent on paper, but they're going to get tested against this LSU offense, just like how this FSU offense is going to test that LSU defense. Florida State defensively, you got a guy in Jared Verse, who if you're an LSU fan, you should be very familiar with because he single-handedly was raising hell on your offense. LSU's offensive line, not just is a major question mark going into this game, but it's a major question mark going into this season. And the play of their offensive line this year is going to have a big factor on determining if they're going to be able to repeat and win the SEC West again. They got two really good offensive tackles, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, both were freshman All-Americans last year. So the main concern with their offense is on the interior. Are they going to get good guard play? Are they going to get good play out of their starting center? This is a really talented defensive line that Florida State has outside of Jared Verse. They got a lot of talent up front and a lot of depth. They got a lot of experience on this defense. This isn't an inexperienced group. There shouldn't really be any miscommunication problems. There shouldn't be a lot of missed tackles. When you got an experienced defense, you expect your defense to be fundamentally sound. Not having a lot of penalties, not having miscommunication problems, not having coverage bust. When I'm trying to evaluate this LSU offense, it's really going to come down to if this offensive line is going to be able to protect Jaden Daniels. Because if that offensive line played like how it did last season, I don't really think this game is going to be close. I think that Florida State will win it by at least 14 points if LSU's offensive line doesn't show up. Florida State, their offensive line is probably the best that has ever been since 2013, 2014? Florida State, the way they've utilized the transfer portal, the way they've been able to go in there, not just find great players, but develop them as well, is a big reason why they're receiving so much hype. I'm a little surprised that a lot of people are picking LSU to win this game. I did a poll on the channel a couple of days ago, and over 70% of you guys are picking LSU. And I'm pretty sure there's a good amount of you guys who are picking LSU because you just want FSU fans to shut the F up because you're tired of them hyping up their team, but the hype is warranted. You're stacked at every position. Your main concern is going to be at safety. One of your safety positions because you're losing a veteran guy to the league. So you wonder how his replacement is going to step up. But outside of that, I mean, this team is stacked. They don't really have too many big question marks. They return their most productive players on offense. They return a lot on defense. And I got to pick them to win this game. I'm going with FSU. Florida State, man, they got a lot to prove in this game. People probably view LSU as the better team, but I feel like FSU is the better team in this game. With all of the pieces that they acquired from the transfer portal, Jaheim Bell, Cypress, Keon Coleman, there's just way too much talent on this Florida State team for them not to be able to win this game. And surprisingly, they're a 2.5-point underdog heading into this matchup. So maybe there's something that I'm overlooking about FSU in this game that may be a big weakness that I'm not mentioning. But Florida State, to me, they got a great offensive line. FSU has really good offensive tackles, but I don't know how good their interior guard play is going to be. And they were too Jaden Daniels dependent last season. Now, I do expect this to be a better team. Defensively, they should be even better than what they were last year, but it's a lot of freaks on this FSU offense. And guarding Jaheim Bell by himself is already a problem. But you got a game plan for not just him, but also Johnny Wilson, 6'7", 240, 235 at wide receiver. Where the hell do you find that at? I like Florida State to beat LSU. North Carolina taking on the Beamer Boys. You better watch out for the Beamer Boys. UNC is a favorite heading into this game by 2.5 points. UNC, when you think of this team, I think of one player, and that's Drake Maye. If Drake Maye plays well in this game, UNC is going to be in it into the final end. But if South Carolina can neutralize Drake Maye and this UNC offense, this is going to be a very long afternoon for them. South Carolina is not a team that you should be overlooking. It doesn't matter if you think UNC is a better team, if they got the better quarterback. You want to know why? Because South Carolina has Shane Beamer. And one thing about it is that in big games, Shane Beamer has these boys always ready to play. Who the hell would have thought they would have been able to beat Clemson and then destroy Tennessee? I mean, not just did they destroy Hendon Hooker's Heisman hopes and his draft stock, but they also ruined Tennessee's playoff hopes. So you look at what South Carolina did at the end of last year and how hot Spencer Rattler was, if Spencer Rattler can carry the momentum that he had last season into this game, South Carolina potentially could run away with this thing if Drake Maye doesn't play well. Now, the good thing is that if you're a Tar Heels fan, is that there's a high chance that Drake Maye plays well in this game. As a matter of fact, I'll be extremely surprised if Drake Maye doesn't play well in this game. The reason being is because, guess what? South Carolina didn't have a damn defense last year. Now, North Carolina, they didn't have a defense last year neither, so there should be a lot of points scored in this game. But South Carolina's secondary, though, is really good. Their defensive line, their linebacker unit should be improved this year, but the strength of this defense is the talent and depth that they have at cornerback. They lost 2 starters to the NFL last year, one of those guys being Cam Smith, but they got some pretty good guys in the fold who should be able to step up and give them really good production. And UNC's receivers are pretty talented, but against this South Carolina secondary, they're going to be challenged. There aren't too many secondaries in the ACC that UNC is going to face this year that have the kind of athleticism and physicality that South Carolina has. This UNC offense, though, when Drake Maye is rolling and he's cooking on all cylinders, they're a headache to stop. And Drake Maye, trying to slow him down is kind of something that is a little bit of a dream to have happen. Honestly, like, if you think South Carolina can shut down Drake Maye, you got a lot of confidence in this defense. Because Drake Maye, the gap between him and Caleb Williams isn't that big. Drake Maye, I've seen this fool do some crazy shit last year in his first season starting at North Carolina. There was a game, I believe it was against Miami. He's getting sacked, still completes the pass anyway. Like, anything that Caleb Williams can do, I think Drake Maye can do. He's that kind of quarterback. So trying to slow him down is damn near impossible. Because anytime you think you got this fool trapped, he just finds a way to Houdini himself out of it. Now, South Carolina's offense against UNC's defense, that's the biggest story in this game. Because South Carolina defensively, I think they got way more talent than what North Carolina has. As a matter of fact, if you had to ask me which defense I thought was going to play better in this game, I will go with South Carolina. Now, the reason why I say South Carolina has a better defense than UNC is because they got a lot of great athletes up front. UNC, they got a lot of talent on their defensive line, but we really don't know if they really have anybody who can really step up like South Carolina can when it comes to being able to get pressure on a quarterback. I think that South Carolina's pass rush is going to be really good this year. And a lot of Gamecock fans are excited about the talent that they have on the defensive line also. It's just more so who's going to end up stepping up, who's going to end up being able to make the big plays. Meanwhile, for UNC, you know, this is a defense that they just let whatever happen last year. If you wanted to get a lot of yards to the air, you were able to have success doing that. You had success running the ball on this defense. And Spencer Rattler, as I mentioned earlier, he had a lot of momentum to end last year. If he plays this game like how he did his final 3 games of 2022, it's going to be a long afternoon for UNC's defense, and it's going to be a lot of pressure on their offense to keep up with South Carolina. South Carolina is a team that isn't just one player dependent. UNC kind of is. The main reason why they're even ranked in the top 25 is because of Drake Maye. I was listening to Joel Klatt the other day, and he posted his top 25. He had UNC in it, and he said it's because of Drake Maye. If this game comes down to a situation where UNC has to find a way to get a stop, do you really think they're going to be able to do so? Spencer Rattler is turnover prone. He does have the tendency to be a little careless and reckless at times due to his backyard style play. But even then, in the fourth quarter, if he's playing a good game and he's just lighting your defense up, South Carolina, their defense, with how good their secondary is, there's a chance that they could come away with a key stop and come away with them more frequently late in this game if it ends up coming down to the wire than what North Carolina is going to be able to be. And USC fans, if they're being unbiased, they probably would tell you the same thing. They don't really have too much faith in this defense this year. They're just asking their defense to get key stops. South Carolina, with what they have on this defensive line this year, they should be able to get some pressure on Drake Maye and be able to get this offense off the field in third down situations. Now, let me lay out this scenario, right? What if Spencer Rattler reverts back to the quarterback that we saw the first half of last season, where he struggled with consistency, he struggled with ball security, and he just wasn't that good? This game dramatically kind of would tilt in UNC's favor. Even though their defense wouldn't be that great, Spencer Rattler, with how inconsistent he can be at times, can make a bad defense look solid at certain moments. And with Drake Maye in this offense, you trust them with Drake Maye having the ball in his hands every single play. Even against this South Carolina defense, I believe that South Carolina defensively can get some stops. But it's not going to mean much if, their offense can't be able to handle their end of the deal. It's just really interesting looking at this game and trying to figure out which defense is going to have the better performance. Drake Maye is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Even if South Carolina's defense is as good as what I think it can be this year, you still might not be able to slow down Drake Maye. Even though you do have really good cornerbacks, it's just Drake Maye just is so hard to stop because there's nothing this dude can't do. He can turn a bad play into a great play. That's what great quarterbacks do. Spencer Rattler, I like him. I do think he can be really good. Most people believe he is going to be an all-SEC player this year, but I don't know if the consistency is still going to be there for him. But I am going to take South Carolina to win this game, though. The reason why I like South Carolina, and I like them to win outright, and I like them to cover, because I just think they're just a way more talented team than what North Carolina is. I think that their defense should be improved. I don't think it's going to be a huge improvement on that side of the football, but I do think that South Carolina, with the talent that they got at cornerback and with their improved pass rush and third down situations, they should be able to get some stops. I know their offensive line is a concern, but I don't really think UNC has the talent on defense to be able to take advantage of a questionable offensive line. Just being honest. I like South Carolina to win this game, and this is my lock off the week. I don't really do a lot of betting stuff, but I feel really confident in Shane Beamer and the Beamer boys being able to pull off this victory. I like South Carolina 38-28 is my final score prediction. Coach Prime is going on the road, taking the Buffs to TCU. And man, you guys don't know how excited I am for this game. Like, everybody's excited for FSU and LSU. F that game, man. I got my eyes set on Colorado versus TCU. How is Colorado going to look in their debut under Coach Prime? Now, TCU is a 19.5 point favorite going into this game, which has me really surprised. Really surprised. All right. I get that Colorado only won one game last year, and they pretty much rebuilt the whole entire team through the transfer portal. You got a lot of new faces. You wonder how long it's going to take for everything to click, the chemistry to get down packed. Those are valid questions. But one thing that you can't deny is the talent that Colorado has on this team, at least from a skill position standpoint. Their secondary is going to be really good. Shiloh Sanders, Travis Hunter, Kamani McLean, the number one cornerback coming out of last year's recruiting cycle. There's a lot of talent when it comes to Colorado's secondary. And you're looking at TCU, who only returns a handful of starters from last year. You're going to have new faces on the offensive line, Chandler Morris taking over at quarterback, and some new faces at wide receiver. Defensively, TCU has a veteran defense. But I do wonder how this defense is going to fare against Colorado's offense, because Colorado has one of the best receiving corps in the Pac-12. They got 2 USF transfers, one of them being Jimmy Horn Jr., who is a guy to look out for in this game. He's super dynamic. He is good in the return game. He's good with the ball in his hands in short yardage situations. If you just want to get the ball out to him in space, he's a monster. Bubble screens, reverses. You got to look out for Jimmy Horn Jr. Travis Hunter is also going to be playing wide receiver. He's very good playing both ways. He has fantastic route running, and he's very fluid with how he runs routes and very good ball control. Well, body control. TCU is going to have a handful with the playmakers that Colorado has on offense. Even though this is a veteran defense, I don't think TCU has the kind of defense that's going to be able to suffocate this Colorado offense, especially with Shedeur Sanders at quarterback. Now, I've heard a lot of bullshit narratives be thrown out there about Shedeur Sanders. So this dude goes from being the best quarterback in FCS to all of a sudden he's just going to become a bum and forget how to play quarterback because he's playing in a larger talent pool. He's playing against better competition. Man, there's been plenty of quarterbacks that's transferred from FCS to FBS and have been successful. I don't think that Shedeur Sanders is going to fold just because they're going up against better competition, and TCU is going to be the first time that he ever goes up against a top team. Shedeur Sanders is one of the most talented quarterbacks in college football. He has a great arm. He has good accuracy. He's a really good athlete. Just because he doesn't have any rushing stats doesn't mean that he doesn't have athleticism. His dad is Deion Sanders. You think that Chandler Morris gives TCU the edge at quarterback?
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
Like, I gotta laugh at you if you think that Chandler Morris gives TCU an edge at quarterback over Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is going to put up some really great numbers against this TCU defense. TCU defensively, they're solid, but when I look at their secondary, I think they're going to have a hard time slowing down this Colorado passing attack. I don't think enough people know how good Shedeur Sanders truly is. Many people have this warped perception that just because Shedeur came from a lower level school that he's going to have a little bit of a transition phase where he struggles. Listen, if you're a good quarterback, you're a good freaking quarterback. I've yet to see a quarterback dominate in FCS and just become a jabroni at a major school when he transfers. Shedeur Sanders and this Colorado offense, they're going to put up a lot of points on this TCU defense. And TCU offensively, if Chandler Morris can end up picking up from where Max Duggan left off, TCU should be able to score a lot of points on Colorado's defense. Although I do like Colorado's secondary, I don't know about that defensive line. Their defensive line is a huge concern to me. I don't really know if they're going to have a guy who's going to be able to step up and get consistent pressure for them. I don't even know if they're going to have much of a pass rush at all. There's not a lot of proven productivity on the defensive line that Colorado has. TCU, you have veterans, you have experience, you have production. Colorado doesn't really have that, and that's why you got people who kind of doubt Colorado's ability to really hang around with TCU in this game because they feel like TCU, being the more deeper team, is going to be able to somewhat get the better of Colorado as this game progresses on, and that very well can happen. We also have to take the note that Colorado has to play this game on the road at TCU, which is a really tough place to win at, especially when you are trying to get chemistry and things still right. You're still trying to get the communication on par. Having to go on the road when you're a new head coach against a team like TCU that has a lot of momentum, Making it to the college football playoffs last year is tough, and home field advantage in college football is everything. And that's something that I've really grown to realize over the last couple of years. The biggest difference between the National Football League and college football is that the majority of upsets happen when you got a great team that's a favorite on the road against a team that's an underdog who may not be as talented, but they have the home field advantage. The home field advantage can kind of neutralize a lot of things. And that's going to play a major part in this matchup. And how Deion Sanders and this Colorado Buffs team is going to handle that hostile crowd is going to be really interesting. But it's really hard to see Colorado pulling off this upset. All right, Colorado, the talent is there. I think that their team is just as good as what TCU has. The problem is just that you got a team that you kind of just made out of nowhere, utilizing the transfer portal. How long is it going to take everybody to get their timing and chemistry down with Deion Sanders at wide receiver? We don't know. They could click right away or they could struggle. But we also got to remember, with this being week 1, this is the prime opportunity for Colorado to go on the road and pull off an upset. You want to know why? Because week 1 is where you can get good teams at a weak spot because they're a little rusty. They still have questions that they're trying to figure out on their end. People think that Colorado has a lot of questions going into this game, but TCU has just as many questions as Colorado. They got a new offensive coordinator. Art Briles is a really good play caller, and there are players that know this system, and nothing major is going to change because this still is Sonny Dykes' offense, but there's some new faces that are going to be starting for TCU who have no familiarity with this offense. You're going to have Chandler Morris having to get adjusted to a new play caller. Like, I get what TCU fans say when they say, oh, well, the offense isn't going to change. It's just the play caller because it's still Sonny Dykes' playbook. That is true, but adjusting to a different play caller does normally take a little bit of some time. And you wonder, with all the new players that TCU is going to have on offense this year, if there's going to be some positions that just aren't as good this year as what they were last year. We keep talking about Colorado having all these questions. You don't really know what to expect, but people make it seem like TCU is fucking Alabama or Georgia or Clemson, that they just reload. They don't got to rebuild. TCU, nobody saw those boys making it to the college football playoffs last year, man. So we got to stop treating TCU like they're Bama. The fact that they're a 20-point favorite over Colorado is so disrespectful, man. And I'm taking Colorado to win this game because I'm crazy as hell. I want to see chaos. I think that Colorado is being severely overlooked in this game. I feel like many people are looking down on Deion Sanders because they think he's a novice as a head coach. They think that this is just a publicity stunt by Colorado. It's going to crash and burn. This is going to be a disaster. I'm trying to tell y'all boys, man. Colorado got a squad, and they got a damn good quarterback in Deion Sanders. And anytime you have a great quarterback, there's not a single game that you don't have a chance at being able to win, whether that be at home or on the road. I really think that Deion Sanders is a big difference maker and a big X factor for Colorado. And I think that even though Colorado may not be as deep as what TCU is, I think their core key players are much better than TCU's key players in this game. Like All McCaskill, Colorado's RB1, scored 16 touchdowns. He was averaging nearly 6 yards per carry his freshman year at Houston. He's coming off a season-ending injury last year. I don't even think he played at all. He's going to be a monster. There's so many weapons on this Colorado offense and defense that I kind of think that Colorado is being slept on in terms of where they rank in terms of talent in comparison to TCU. Sonny Dykes was only there for 1 year. Y'all acting like he done built a damn dynasty. Y'all acting like he done built a juggernaut. Colorado, I like them to win this game. 34-31 is my final score prediction. I'm going with the Buffs. Before we move on to some NFL topics, if you haven't already, make sure that you go ahead, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Rate the JT Sports Podcast 5 stars. We're available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Rate us 5 stars, man, if you want to support the channel. Shout out to everybody in the chat. What's up, David Corona? Volcano says, what's good, my boy? What's good with you, Volcano? Man, I'm just trying to get through this. I'm starting to hit 100%. The last couple of episodes have been tough because I'm fighting a flu. I don't know what the hell I got, man. I moved into my college dorm and I got sick as hell. So if you wonder why, you don't hear any sound for a brief moment where it looks like I'm dying in the background, it's because I'm coughing, and I don't really want anybody that listens to this on podcast to hear me dying on the mic. Like, be honest, bro. You don't want to hear a motherfucker choking on the mic. Like, bro, like, you want me to tighten that shit up, man. So I apologize if you wonder why I'm having the brief muting. It's because, like, I'm dying in the background from coughing. So I don't want that to get too much on the audio. Now, I want to touch on a couple of NFL topics before I get off here today. The Tennessee Titans, it looks like they're going to be in for a really tough year. Ryan Tannehill is starting to regress. Derrick Henry is starting to hit that threshold age where running backs start to show a little bit of decline. DeAndre Hopkins, some people question if he's still good enough to be a wide receiver 1 for any team in the league. Like, there are people that really think DeAndre Hopkins is washed up. I'm not making this shit up. Go on Twitter and look up DeAndre Hopkins. Like, there are literally a good amount of people who think that DeAndre Hopkins is going to end up becoming what Julio Jones did when he got traded to the Tennessee Titans. Now, you look at this defense, it's very talented. And this is probably the most underrated defense entering the upcoming NFL season. I mean, they got a lot of talent on that defensive line. Harold Landry is a double-digit sack guy. You got my guy, Jeffrey Simmons, my favorite interior defensive lineman in the league. You got talent at linebacker. The back end of that secondary is fantastic. Cornerback is really good. And Tennessee, if you think they're going to have a top 5 pick in next year's draft, I think that you're kind of overlooking one of the most important pieces to having a good team. And that's a good head coach. Anytime you have a good head coach, you're going to have the ability to be in games that you had no business being in. Do you remember when Tennessee played Kansas City on the road last year on Arrowhead, and they took the Chiefs to overtime with Malik Willis at quarterback? Tennessee, despite all the damn injuries that they had last year, still had a chance to win the AFC South the final week of the season with Joshua freaking Dobbs at quarterback, who they picked up pretty much off the street out of nowhere because Malik Willis wasn't good enough to get the job done. You want to know why Tennessee is still able to be a competitive team despite the fact that they've had injury problems that have plagued them the last couple of seasons, not having great offensive line play, not having great quarterback play from their backups, with Ryan Tannehill being down? The reason for Tennessee being able to go on the road and compete with Kansas City on Arrowhead last year is due to how good of a coach Mike Vrabel is. And my homeboy Artie, part of Film is a Art, go ahead and check my boys out. I did a guest appearance on their podcast, The Sunday Spiral, and he asked me, JT, what do you think about the Titans? Like, he doesn't think the Titans are going to be good. I said this, listen, man, like, the Titans may not have anything that excites you on offense. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is washed up, but if you think that he's washed up, I'm not going to argue with you because we'll be here all day. Derrick Henry is still amongst the top 3, top 5 running backs in the game. Ryan Tannehill, I don't think he's dog shit. When did Ryan Tannehill go from being a top 15 quarterback that you can win with to becoming one of the worst quarterbacks in the league? People be talking about Ryan Tannehill like he's Baker Mayfield or something. Ryan Tannehill is still a really serviceable quarterback. If he becomes a free agent next year, I think that there is going to be a solid market for Ryan Tannehill. I think that Ryan Tannehill, with him having DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, should still be able to have a really good season in terms of at least being able to do what the Tennessee Titans need him to do, which is not turn the football over and be a good game manager. And you got DeAndre Hopkins, who is probably the best receiver that Ryan Tannehill has played with since A.J. Brown. Traylon Burks was a disappointment his rookie season, and there wasn't really too many dependable targets on this offense outside of that tight end they have in Okonkwo. So there's some weapons for them to work with. The question with Tennessee offensively is going to be their offensive line. Their offensive line looks awful. It doesn't matter how you Tennessee fans want to try to slice it up or try to twist it up, try to hype a couple of these guys up. Like, this offensive line does not look good. But it doesn't really matter because you got Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel, he'll find a way. If Tennessee wins anything less than 7 games this year, I'll be shocked. Incredibly shocked. Tennessee is not one of those teams that you can judge based on paper. You have to give them a couple of brownie points because they got Mike Vrabel. I think that no team in the NFL embodies the personality of their head coach better than what the Tennessee Titans do. This is a tough team. This is a scrappy team. They're going to scratch. They're going to claw. If you allow Tennessee to hang around late in the game with 2 minutes left, they're going to beat you and they're going to upset you if they're an underdog going into that game. Like, Tennessee is just one of these teams that you kind of just have to give them a little bit more respect, even though you may not like their roster because of Mike Vrabel. And I think that all of us in the live chat can all agree that Mike Vrabel is one of the best coaches in the NFL. You look at what Tennessee has overcome over the last couple of years with all the injuries they have had and still having a shot to win this division, make it to the playoffs. It's a compliment to how good of a coach Mike Vrabel is. Mike Vrabel is too good for Tennessee to be in the conversation to get a Caleb Williams or a Drake Maye. They're too good to be having a top 5 pick in next year's draft. Even if Tennessee wanted to tank, they wouldn't be able to because Mike Vrabel is just too damn good. And this defense should be good enough to keep them in the majority of games that they play in, unless they're just playing against a elite high-level offense. With how good this defense is, you don't need your offense to do much. All you need your offense to do is to at least give you 21 points, and that's it. And I think you can get that. Derrick Henry should still be really good despite not having a great offensive line in front of him. Ryan Tannehill has DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, there's talent on offense for Tennessee to have some success and to be serviceable. They're not going to have a top 10 offense or anything that amazes you, but it should be a good enough offense to get the job done. Mike Vrabel is just too damn good for Tennessee to be asked this year. Like, I'm sorry, if you think that Tennessee is going to win 2, 3, or 4 games, I think you're freaking crazy. Mike Vrabel, I'm going to give him the benefit of a doubt that even though Tennessee may not have one of the top rosters in the AFC, I still think that they are a team that should be in contention for at least the final wild card spot this year. It seems like ever since 2019, many of us have been saying, oh, the Browns, this could finally be the year. They could finally compete for a Super Bowl. And it seems like every single year, the Browns fall short of being able to live up to any somewhat high expectations. But it's 2023. And you're going into this season with a lot of things to be excited about. Deshaun Watson had a whole entire offseason with no nonsense, no distractions, being able to really get into the playbook, being able to develop good chemistry and timing with his teammates, and he's looked really good throughout the preseason. Your offensive line is amongst the best in the NFL. Hell, even your damn backup offensive tackles are even dominating. Your defense, you got a new defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz. You brought in a lot of talent on the interior defensive line, including paying a lot of money to Dalvin Tomlinson in free agency to improve your run defense, and you got a really damn good secondary. If everything goes right for the Cleveland Browns, I don't think it's crazy to see this team being in the AFC Championship game, honestly. But like I said earlier, it seems like we've been saying this about the Cleveland Browns every year since 2019. When the hell are the Browns going to be able to live up to the level of talent that they have on this damn roster? I'm waiting. There are people that think that the Cleveland Browns, for the first time in forever, will finish above Pittsburgh in this division. Somebody has to come in last place, and a lot of people think it's going to be Pittsburgh. The Browns might finally be good this year, and there might not be anything we can say about them to say otherwise. This roster, really, where do they have any significant holes outside of the interior of their defensive line? We don't know who's going to be that second guy lining up next to Dalvin Tomlinson. I mean, they did trade for another pass rusher from Minnesota. I can't think of his name right now, but it's going to come to me. Just give me some time. But Myles Garrett, some people may say that he's the best defensive player in the NFL. Now, I don't know how far I'm willing to go with that because I am a Steelers fan. And even if I wasn't, I probably still would take TJ Watt over Myles Garrett because Myles Garrett just brings a lot of athleticism. He brings, a really elite pass rush presence. But TJ Watt just does everything well, even when it comes to him dropping back in coverage. Now, you did trade for Zadarius Smith. That was his name. He's a really good piece to add alongside of Myles Garrett because you've been looking for that second pass rusher to put outside of him for a while. And you are probably really confident that Zadarius Smith is going to be that guy. But is he going to be able to give you consistent, 10-sack production at least for the next 2-3 years? We don't know if he's even going to be a 10-sack guy this year. He could be a guy who could be a little bit on the decline, and that's why Minnesota was willing to part ways with him. Now, you can say, well, JT, it was some cap situations why they wanted to trade him. Bruh, in the NFL, 3 of the highest paid positions in this league are quarterback, offensive tackle, and pass rushers. Anytime you got a good pass rusher, you're not trying to trade them for just anything. Even if you got a productive pass rusher, you want to keep Zadarius Smith around if he's still an elite player. So the fact that Minnesota was willing to trade Zadarius Smith for what they got in return for him, it kind of is alarming to me. And when I look at Deshaun Watson, we expect for him to bounce back to the Houston version of Deshaun Watson. The Deshaun Watson that was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL before the bullshit happened. How do you know Deshaun Watson is still going to be that same player? What if he just isn't a good fit in Kevin Stefanski's system? We just can't ignore how bad he looked last year. You can say it's rust, and I will say that he was a little rusty, but what if that's just the new Deshaun Watson? What if Deshaun Watson will never be able to play up to the level that he ever did with the Houston Texans? Maybe he just was a good fit in Bill O'Brien's offense. I don't think enough people are talking about that. It's easy to say Deshaun's going to bounce back, but what if he just isn't as good now as what he used to be before he got traded to Cleveland? And that's a major nightmare if you're a Browns fan. And the Cleveland Browns, they haven't done well anytime they've had anything remotely close to being considered high expectations. The year they went to the playoffs, what did they do after? They missed it. They got rid of Baker Mayfield and they traded for Deshaun Watson, which you kind of can feel was a little bit of a panic move. The Cleveland Browns, anytime you give this organization some expectations and a reason to be optimistic, they let you down. So is this finally the year that it's safe to believe in the Cleveland Browns? If you're somebody who puts a lot of money into over-under win totals, is it safe to put your money on the over of Cleveland? Is it safe to even put money on Cleveland being able to win this division? You can say that this team is too talented for them not to be able to live up to those expectations, but it seems like we've been saying that for the last couple of years. Outside of last season, we knew last season was going to be a little bit of a tough year with Deshaun Watson being suspended for, 11, 12 games? But this season, though, there are a lot of people that are really banking on Cleveland to be good this year, and I don't know if I'm one of those people. I don't think this is the year that I think it's safe to believe in the Browns. I really don't. I just think something wrong is going to happen with this team. I don't know what it is. Like I said, they got so much talent. It's hard to say this team is not going to be good or be able to be a Super Bowl contender when you judge their roster on paper. But I just got a weird feeling with this team. The same feeling that I had with the Denver Broncos last year. Remember, a lot of y'all don't give me my props for that. But Denver, there was just something missing with them last season. I don't know what it was. I also wasn't high on Nathaniel Hackett. Maybe I just don't think Kevin Stefanski is it. But I do like Kevin Stefanski. Even if the Browns missed the playoffs this year, I still feel like Kevin Stefanski should return. He's not a bad coach. He's not an ass coach. He's just in a tough division. Yeah, you got to win games, but I don't know. I just think that the Browns, with just how they've had expectations in the past and they haven't really been able to live up to them, I think this could be another season where the Cleveland Browns disappoint and they finish in the bottom of the AFC North. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, man. Football season is officially in full swing. I'm so excited. For those of you guys who don't know, I'm in college right now. I'm recording this in my dorm room, if you guys can't tell. We got the black curtains. They kind of moving right now because the AC in this building, bruh, it's cold as hell in this room. It's 100 degrees outside where I'm at in Florida, and I got to wear a damn hoodie in here. And I don't even know how you turn the shit off, but football season's in full swing. I'm so excited. It's I have a hard time going to class and focusing because all I be thinking about is coming on here and live streaming and talking to y'all. I love this so much, and I'm trying to get to 100 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. So if you guys enjoyed today's episode and you want to support the channel, go ahead, give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. You can find the links down in the description down below. All you got to do is scroll down a little bit, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. Or you can go to whichever podcasting platform you prefer. Type in JT Sports and it will pop up. You can leave us a 5-star review that way. Just go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. Man, college football season is really back, man. And college football is going to look so different after this year. We got the expanded playoffs. We're going to have teams playing in different conferences. Oregon, USC in the Big 10. Oklahoma, Texas in the Big 12. It's just a really great time to be a fan of football. I think that the 2023 NFL season could be one of the greatest in NFL history. Because think about all the storylines we have. I mean, we got stacked divisions. Every division in the AFC seems like it's freaking stacked. The AFC East, anybody could win it outside of the Patriots. And then you got teams like the Titans that are being counted out because they may not have a talented team and they have a damn good head coach and they're going to fight like hell. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another episode.